welcome to the SCI Guys, the show where we talk about the crazy, weird, and wonderful stories from the science world. I'm Corey, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Luke Cutforth and special guest Shaba.
Hey!
This week, we're talking about bi babes and lesbian lasses, but first, we have to thank all of our patrons, don't we, Luke?
Thank you.
Thanks. Do you want to thank him, Shaba?
Ta, babe.
Yeah, did nothing for Shaba, but she still thanked you. That's just how nice you lot are. I've also got a question for everyone who's watching or listening. And if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else, get to the YouTube comments, answer this question down there. If you're on YouTube, you know what to do already. The question is, are you bisexual or a woman? Or perhaps both? Let us know.
Did you just ask the internet, are you a woman?
Yeah.
Why are you Matt Walshing us right now?
I'm not asking, I don't care what a woman is. I just want to know if you are one. And if you are a bi... Look, it's relevant to the apps. Don't make me...
Gender the internet.
I need like a red card system for all the potential cancellations.
Okay, so what are we talking about today? Luke, do you have any idea? Have you picked it up yet?
Presumably something about bisexuality, but maybe more because you said lesbian lasses.
Yes, but have you noticed anything else about the two groups? I mean, come on. Bisexuals and...
woman?
Yes!
Woman.
And Shaba, what are you doing here? What brings you to this neck of the
I
woods?
think I maybe fall in the middle of your Venn diagram today.
That's so true.
I may be both bi and a woman.
We found one! We did it!
The last time I checked.
You got to get a checkup at the doctor every now and then, just to make sure.
To be diagnosed with woman.
Oh no.
To be diagnosed with woman. So, in 2020, approximately 3.2% of the UK were over the age of 16. Okay, look, this comes from census stuff, I'm pretty sure. Over 16s are the only ones we look at in the census, right? So in 2020, approximately 3.2% of the UK population, over 16, identified as lesbian, gay, or bisexual. LGB. LGB. But bisexuality is like... It's different when it comes to men and women, apparently. Women were 1.6% of women were bisexual, and 0.9% of men were bisexual, which is a disparity there of 7.7%. That's quite a bit, isn't it? What's that all about?
Sorry.
Good input, Luke.
Yeah.
So
I was clocking.
So basically, what we found out is that, or what we could see is that women apparently are 3 times ish more likely to be bisexual than men. That was from another study.
To disclose, right? To report.
Yeah, there we go. Yes, Shava knows. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, all of this sort of stuff comes from self-reporting, really. It's going to be pretty difficult to to do it otherwise, right? And so what we're measuring here isn't necessarily what people actually are, is what people say they are. That sounds bad. Hold on, let me rephrase it. What we're measuring here is not the absolute number of bisexuals or gays or lesbians. It is the people that disclose that. Yeah,
the self-grasses.
Yeah, the foundation is just that. This is the approximate number of bisexual women in the UK, and women are more likely to disclose bisexuality than men. What is bisexuality? I feel like we should define that. I kind of take it as a given, but what is your definition of bisexuality, Shaba?
I did a video on this because you say it's a given.
You do
I'm
videos?
kind of nervous about this.
What? Where can people
that was
find
not meant
these?
to be a plug. I swear to God.
Where can people find these
we're not
videos?
Doing this. No, my point is, I always saw bisexuality as meaning two, right? Like attracted to two genders. This is not the case. Shaba's bigoted ways has learnt and understood it's 2 or more, right? It's being attracted to multiple genders, and I was initially confused about how that therefore differed from pansexuality, but from what I understand from the community is it's an approach.
Yeah. I mean, the way I look at this, and so when I say that I take the definition of bisexuality as a given, I just mean people generally get the vibe that people who are bi are like, I'm
You'll
not
look at
gay,
the whole menu.
I'm not straight, I'm up for all of these things, whatevs, and maybe with some restrictions, but yeah. So I mean, if I'm going to define it, I would say bisexuality is generally defined as 2 or more. Pansexuality is generally defined as attraction without gender, as in gender isn't a factor in your attraction. For example, with me, handedness does come into whether or not I'm attracted to someone.
Again.
What? Left-handed folk are, I'm not trying to fetishize them here, but left-handed folk are incredibly attractive to me.
Seriously, Corey, so you will like look at people and be less attracted to them if they're right-handed?
No, I'm just trying to make up for being really leftophobic a few years ago.
In the first few hundred episodes of this show, Corey just dunked on the left-handeds any chance he got.
It was supposed to be a joke about how bigoted people are, because I just chose a group that aren't disadvantaged but are different.
But they are.
What, they were, not anymore.
You ever used a fountain pen?
Oh my god. Okay, right.
To be fair, I was like religiously left-handed people are super discriminated against.
Yeah, no. Yes.
Luke has a point.
Yeah, okay, look, that's why I learned
rights.
and I changed my ways, which is now a joke about, growth.
Great.
So now
There
you're
we go.
exclusively attracted to left-handed people, that's what you're
I
saying.
swung too far the other way.
Yeah.
No. So
He's bi-handed.
No, so like, I mean, if you think about it, like, you don't notice really, you don't care whether someone's got attached or detached earlobes, right?
I actually sometimes, I spend a lot of time looking at earlobes, actually.
I prefer detached ones, to be perfectly honest
Yeah, me
with you.
too. I'm not gonna lie.
Sorry.
But that's because I have them.
I've never been more
Yes, same.
pleased
Yeah.
to be wearing headphones right
I know,
now.
you don't want to know. You don't want
we're gonna attach earlobe person on the pod? God.
But yeah, no, I mean, there are a lot of debates over, oh no, this is pansexual, or this is actually bisexual, or this is omnisexual. Children, shut up. I promise you, no one cares that much. Your label is for you, so if to you, bisexual means specifically this thing, that's fine.
You have to label or not label yourself with how you feel. The only time that I will get involved, it really pisses me off, right, is when people go to me, no, Shaba, you're pan because you're with a trans guy. I'm like, no, that is just transphobic.
It is very much so, yeah. But some trans people think that as well, And I'm not saying like, oh, it's not transphobic because some trans people think that as well. I mean, some trans people also have that like internalized, that it's bisexual until trans people are involved. That is the silliest way. It's the silliest way of viewing sexuality, though. Do you know what I mean? Like, in that,
there's no difference to me between saying that and then being like, oh well, Shaba's brown, so I'm not into brown women. That doesn't fit my definition of lesbian.
All
It's
brown
just
women,
another adjective.
all brown women are alike in a few ways, and so not being attracted to brown women as a whole isn't racist because of the characteristics that all brown women share.
Such as that they're brown.
Yeah. Wait. Oh no. Oh, you got me.
I got you.
You tricked me into being racist again, Luke. You did it.
Caught you in that cul-de-sac.
No. Of course.
Your humor is so dry. I can't deal.
Of course. It is absolutely racist to exclude, an entire race of people, or not even a race, because brown isn't a race, just a skin vibe of people. That sounds worse. Brown isn't I really struggle to say that brown is a race because it isn't. You know what I mean?
I should have picked something less charged. I mean, like tall people,
No,
or
yeah.
short. Like it's just an adjective.
I mean, I get it. I'm just trying to point out that it is absolutely discriminatory to be like, I'm not attracted to this category of people. Like, I'm not attracted to brown people or black people or trans people. The reason that that's offensive is because you're then assuming that this entire group shares multiple qualities outside of just having the same race or the same, not even the same gender, but being trans. Like, it's the issue is that you're applying other things to this category that don't apply to that category. You're sort of generalizing, which is not very good. Don't do that. Yeah.
People aren't stereotypes.
Okay, so we kind of understand what bisexuality is. Attraction to two or more genders. Generally, it's defined as attraction to your gender and any number of others. But if you they all come under the same umbrella of like omnisexuality or the bi umbrella. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter which specific one you choose. It's all roughly the same vibe. Your choice of label is entirely up to you, and if it's valid to you, then goods. Awesome, great. But the actual differences don't matter. They don't matter in the grand screen.
Double bi, thumbs up.
Okay, so now I want to talk about someone called Gerolf Rieger. Do you guys know Gerolf Rieger?
I do, actually.
What?
Small world.
What?
No, seriously though, this wasn't planned, right? Like when you asked me about this.
Oh my god, yeah, no.
It is just a small world.
So I invited Shaba on because Shaba's a bisexual woman, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know that many bisexual women that are also like online. So many of them are gay now. Like they were bi at one point.
Honestly.
And now, no, but some of them, like a lot of them are like, oh, actually, I realized I'm a lesbian. I'm like, I'm going through my list of, because that's how I categorize my friends. I put them all in in a list.
You've got a Rolodex of orientation.
It has to be separated by different social characteristics, because how else am I going to know who to invite on the podcast for what? Like, are you kidding me? No. I'm joking. But like, I was thinking about all these people. I'm like, oh, wait, no, comp het got them, and now they're lesbians. That's not to say that bi women aren't valid. It's just...
Bisexuality is just a phase, everyone. That's
just
what
a phase.
telling us. It's okay.
And Shaba's at the bi point of that journey. No, but anyway, I messaged Shaba being like, hey, do you want to do this? And Shaba was like, oh yeah. My husband's supervisor or whatever. No, I know them very well. And I'm like, oh yeah, I knew that. I totally forgot.
So weird to hear the term husband. But yes, Gerolf, or he's Austrian. He has got this like amazing accent. When I first met him, I was like, how do I pronounce your name? Do you think I'm not sure if I should do it. I don't want to butcher it.
Try.
Go for it. He's not going to listen.
He may. Gerolf, if you're seeing this, I'm sorry. But he pronounces his name like Gerolf.
Ooh, love that.
It was sexy. It was good.
Oh, really?
But it is Riga, as far as I'm concerned.
Riga. Okay.
But I just say Gerolf.
Okay, so great. So I did a little digging on Gerolf. Gerolf.
Oh, that's sexy.
Thank you.
I can't contain myself.
I did a little digging.
Luke's nearly as into that as the earlobes, I tell you.
So he got a master's in biological anthropology from the University of Zurich, which is in Switzerland, and then a PhD in personality psychology from Northwestern University, which is in America. And then he moved to the University of Essex at some point, and started doing stuff there. That's where Shaba becomes
Jamie, presumably.
Yeah, with Jamie, who was on another episode talking about similar things. You can go and check that one out. It's up there somewhere. Or you're listening to this and you have to find it yourself. Just search for an episode with Jamie Rains.
SCI GUYS Jamie, you'll find it.
Not hard. So I had a look, at the University of Essex website to see what was going on with this dude, and he's listed some of his research interests, focused on sexual orientation, how it develops, how it's organized, and how it affects a person's life. He says that he uses a wide diversity of methodologies. Used childhood okay. I'm going to do I'm going to add a little bit in here before I read out what I was just about to read. A lot of this stuff is about physiological sexual activity, so the physiological responses to being shown certain things. So he goes on to say, I've used childhood videos and photographs to examine how behavioral signals of early masculinity, femininity predict adult sexual orientation. Oh, thank God, I misread the word photograph. I thought he was talking about something else. Pornograph. Anyway.
You thought he was talking about child pornography?
No! I just thought they were mentioned in the same sentence. Like, I've used childhood videos and pornography to study this thing. And I was like, I need to explain this before I say it.
They're really cute photos. It's just nothing of the sort, I swear to God.
Pornography is used in some studies. That's why I got confused.
We did one where we people strapped that was Jamie's one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was Jamie's episode where we measured erectile function when watching pornography or something.
That's this one too.
Yeah, that's this one too. Wow.
Yeah.
I hadn't quite had enough of that.
Not kids. Yeah.
Very different.
Not kids. That's why I wanted to stress that this is what's being done. There's these are separate things. That's why I was worried. I was confused. Turns out I misread it. Don't worry. Anyway.
You could just re-record this section.
No, it's so much funnier. It's so much funnier.
Corey, you are done towing the line of cancel culture so hard.
Oh, I danced on that line every bloody day. And then, on the website as well, it goes on to talk about other people that he supervised, or, is whatever the word is for people that work under you that you help in some way.
Underlings.
Sure. One of those underlings is...
Minions, if you will.
One of those underlings is Jamie Rains.
Ah, my favourite minion.
Which, I'm going to say, it's really funny to be like working and then be like, ha, I know that. I know that one. I know him.
I do think this is a really interesting topic, though. I don't know. I mean, you clearly researched a lot about Gerolf, and one of the things that I find really interesting is his supervisor, Michael Bailey.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, I'm not afraid to say, I really am not a fan of the research of. I think a lot of research into gender, particularly things that try to umbrella trans identity, especially from where they come from and when they, mention things like autogynephilia, it's not very nuanced. You're right. It's incredibly archaic. And I remember even with Jamie and his PhD, from what Gerolf had learnt, a lot of things were still being phrased as like lesbian trans men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which we discussed in like a whole load in that episode. Yeah. I mean, it's just
academia do better, right? That's the message.
Like, actually, yeah, no. And I mean, I understand, scientists' desire to be clear and specific and descriptive in their language. The issue is that, unfortunately, it's not clear or specific when you say a lesbian transgender person. Like, we have terms for this now. Trans,
you can be clear and specific and respectful.
And you can be, yeah, exactly, right. And to be honest, the argument that I'm making as well here is, even if you don't care about being respectful, which a lot of scientists don't care about being respectful because they think they're above it. They're not. If you don't care about it, your lack of sort of respect for people's identities is impacting clarity. Like if I'm reading a paper and I need to be like, okay, every single time they say homosexual male, they mean straight trans woman. If I've got to do that in my head every single time I'm reading, it's going to be difficult. And no matter what TERFs or whatever say, I genuinely don't believe they see trans women as as men, right? Like, I genuinely don't believe that. I don't believe that you could see a straight trans woman and be like, that is a gay man. Conceptually, maybe, but like, it's not. I don't think it's really how they actually engage with the world. You know what I mean? So it is just needlessly confusing for pretty much everyone.
Totally rooted in bigotry, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Honestly, the mind cartwheels that they need to do to quote unquote correct themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm only not mentioning the bigotry because it's just it's a given. Like, it's absolutely bigoted. Yes, I'm not trying to say that it's more important that we be clear or whatever. Forget the bigotry. I'm just meaning, like, let's say you don't care about the bigotry, there's still a clear issue with it. But yeah, no. So that's kind of the background on the sort of people that have done. Well, let's say the person that kind of led these studies. Why don't we talk a little bit about the sort of study itself? So, do you remember a news story? I mean, Shaba, I'm sure you'll remember this, but look, do you remember a news story from a few years back where we discovered that actually not a single woman on this planet, not one, is straight. They are all either bi or lesbians.
Okay, yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. So there was a study a while back that we talked about where we were looking at people's sexual response to pornography. And I'm fairly certain, in my memory of this, that if you show pornography to male people, then their sexual response is basically aligned with their sexuality. So if they are, if they consider themselves to be straight, they're going to have, and you do this by like measuring blood flow to their penis or something. If they're straight, then they are going to only have blood flow to their penis when they watch women porn, but porn with women in it.
Women
porn.
Sorry. And the opposite with gay men. But then in this case, this for specificity, female human beings, if they are watching straight porn or porn with men in or porn with women in, they have basically the same sexual response regardless of their sexuality. Is that right? So straight women will have a sexual arousal response to women on the screen, even if they don't consider themselves lesbians. And the headlines for this were like, all women are bi. And that is not necessarily at all a helpful response.
Don't believe everything you see in the papers.
Yeah. The Daily Mail probably wrote that.
Nope. BBC, Independent, everyone.
Okay, all right.
Which we know are like so impartial, right?
Yeah,
sure.
They're the best.
Again, I don't want to cast aspersions on anyone. I would say that given that this was run with by pretty much everyone, it feels like it might have been part of like a sort of press release. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know what I mean?
Right, yes.
Is that
a copy-paste from the Science press release?
Yeah, like I feel like this is like this. I don't know. It's very easy for this stuff to get like diluted into nonsense anyway, because you've got one person who's working at like, you know, a kind of non-sciencey person who's got to write the science stories, and they're like, oh well, I've got this story, I'm not really sure, I guess this is what it's saying, this is what people will click on.
For the record, Gerolf was really annoyed about this press.
Really?
He was really frustrated about how it was taken, because it's not at all
good.
The actual the primary purpose of the research was actually based in methodology. It was to find if pupil dilation works as well as genital measures of arousal. Yeah. And obviously the findings are also fantastic and useful, but not what the papers suggest.
Am I right in remembering that there was some part of that study that also showed that like trans men also had an arousal pattern closer to that of cis men?
That was work that Jamie ended up doing.
That's then Jamie's study.
But you're right. That's like the sequel to this study, which I think is really cool. And actually, Luke, where I think you were totally right beforehand when you said cis men, because in this initial study, Gerolf only looked at cisgender men and women.
It's so bloody difficult, especially when it's just like, when you were looking back, when I want to talk about stuff on the podcast, I specify cis men and cis women where it's relevant, even if the paper doesn't specify it, because I'm like, well, I know what papers from like 10 plus years ago are going to be saying, right? If a trans person was involved, I would know about it. Yeah. So I have to assume that they're all cis, but then you can't necessarily say that those are, you can't then assume that those findings apply only to cis men, or that they don't apply only to cis. It's like, you can't make any assumptions because you just have no information on it. And it's really, it becomes really difficult when you want to translate essentially older work into a more modern way of speaking. Yeah. It's real rough. I'm really glad though that you mentioned that he did not like how this was brought up, because I saw an article somewhere that was like, oh yeah, this was him, he pushed for this to be seen like this, and I'm like, that seems rubbish. But I'm glad that he's good. I'm glad that he's a good one. But yeah, no, I mean, so this study, I mean, as you're saying, Shaba, it didn't just involve, measuring genitals. It also involved looking, basically tracking eye movements. I mean, the abstract basically talks about it being kind of wanting to look at lesbians as well. And one of the goals was to find whether lesbians sort of male typical characteristics had the same root cause. So the male typical characteristic of lesbians to have attraction, exclusively, to show sort of physiological attraction exclusively to, the members of the sex that they claim to be attracted to. That's a male typical trait, right? Because in cis and trans men, that's what you see. They say, I'm a straight man. They're only getting horned up for the ladies. And if they say, I'm a gay man, oh boy, do they love the men? The point is that lesbians don't exhibit typical, female attraction patterns. And they want to see whether this masculine trait had the same root as other masculine traits that we've measured in lesbians, like, having short hair and being duty.
I don't think those are innate.
And being what?
Duty.
How does someone be duty? What does that mean?
Just being like a guy. Just like a dude,
Oh, duty.
Yes.
Okay.
What did you think he was saying?
Duty.
Like a poo. Like a poo.
It's like, what is this?
These lesbians are a bit pooey.
I'm not really with the hip kids these days. I'm learning the internet vernacular.
The typical Gen Z expression, duty.
Duty.
Ding-a-ling-ling, is that the ad bell?
I thought it was my tinnitus, but it turns out it's the ad bell.
What is he ringing for this week, Luke?
Well, today the show is being sponsored and supported, as always, actually, by our Patreon.
What? A Patreon? Is that where people can go and pay for trees on something?
That is not what it is. Maybe we'll do that as a perk one day. But for now, the Patreon is a place where people can go, people who love this show, like you, for example, can go and support the show existing. It's very complicated and expensive to make this show, and our patrons help it to exist. So we think you are very lovely for doing that.
Yeah, if you've ever noticed anyone's name scrolling through at the end of a SCI GUYS episode, that's because they're our patrons, and we want to thank our patrons for helping us make this show. So to do that, we give them a whole bunch of things. Perks like bonus episodes and a different show, and other things. What else do we give them, Luke?
They get to submit topic ideas for the show for Corrie to consider, and then also those topic ideas go into a vote that is voted on every month by our patrons only. So they basically get to control us once a month.
So if you really love SCI Guys and you're not content with just sitting back and watching us natter on, you want to have a hand in the show, you want to be a part of it, go ahead and sign up to our Patreon because you can be a part of this show.
Shall we get on with that show?
We shall.
Another way to kind of, just in case people can't comprehend, is the way that we say who we know we are and the way that we report our attraction going and how our genitals and physiological responses respond correlate more in men than they do in women. And what Girl was finding here is that lesbians follow a more male typical pattern in that sense.
I'm so glad that you're so close to this study because I took that as an excuse to be like, I'm just going to toss it to Shaba. I'll talk nonsense and then Shaba will do all the hard work. And that's
it's good. No,
that's how
it's useful when I think because I've been on both sides. I've helped run some of these studies and I've also been in the porn booth looking at these studies. So it makes...
Is that what they call it? The porn booth?
It's the porn booth the sex lab. It is
the
it is
porn
what
booth
it is.
in the sex lab. That's a book I want to write. That's fantastic. That would get Guardian top sellers.
Hey, maybe we can visit the porn booth one day. I've gotten in with
with Geralt.
Yeah, the head of the sex lab. I know that.
Ah, you know the head of the sex lab. Does he own the porn booth? Dude, he built the porn booth.
The sound insulated. There's walkie-talkies, ambient lighting. There's a box of Kleenex, babe. I mean, that's how legit.
That's everything you need. You only need as well, if you just add a little sink system in there, you can keep your hands a little wash afterwards, you know, just to be extra clean. Maybe like
it's not as like sleazy as we're making it sound. It's all very official.
Very unsexy, you know, very no. No, absolutely. I mean, and thank you for adding that.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, like it's a really interesting kind of thing to look into. And what I find really interesting about it as well is the way, is what we've already kind of mentioned, is the way that the media kind of picks up on it and decides to say, yes, all women are lying or are wrong about who they're attracted to. Silly ladies.
Well, I mean, the way that they covered this stuff about all women are actually bi is like pretty much exactly the same thing as them running a headline that says, "Oh, it turns out that all lesbians are men." Secret men.
Yeah, no, I find that a view that scientists tend to have that the general public tends to lack is, and this isn't like an innate thing, this is just something that you kind of learn, is when something happens and you see the thing happen, scientists will be like, I wonder why that happened. Let's try and find an explanation that matches everything that we know, or update our current model to include this new thing. And most other people will just be like, oh, that must mean this then.
Yes.
Good. I'm not thinking about this anymore. Women are dumb and lying. Ha ha ha. It's just when you actually like look at the papers and read what the people are saying about it, it's very much not that. It's not, we've come to the conclusion that all women are wrong. It's, hey, this is what we've measured. I wonder why that is. Let's try and find out some more about this phenomenon that we don't understand, we don't have a causal understanding of.
It's also a little concerning, like, when we're making this distinction between, like, the media and the scientists, it's like, that's just critical thinking, right?
Yeah.
So when a scientist gets data and they go, that must mean this thing, it's like, oh, well, no, it could also mean this thing. Oh, it could also mean this thing. Oh, actually, I can design a test that means I can rule out whether it's this one or this one. That is science, but it's also just like critical thinking, right? It's just thinking through something with your prefrontal cortex. And it's a little bit concerning that like that basic critical thinking skill is not being employed by like the media, the people whose job is to take information and disseminate it to the masses. That's like, if anyone needs that,
because you're really...
Gil, it's them.
You're overestimating what the media's job is. The media's job has changed. The media's job is to make money. And it's to get clicks, and the clicks are led, sadly, through fear and shock scrolling.
Yes.
So
I'm just talking about in my ideal society, like what's the social function of the media outside of revenue generation?
Yeah.
It's disseminating information and making it accessible. But if they get it wrong, if they like misrepresent the information, you're not doing your job. Oh, wait, no, your job was to make money. Okay, fine. Whoopsie, I'm silly and an ideologue. But
it spins back as well, and it affects what people can or want to study.
Yeah.
Because, this is useless. What's no one's going to care about this. Like, it's such a difficult situation where money is just spoiling this thing that it has no right to spoil. Like, I don't prefer this, by the way. Just putting it out there, I'm glad that not everyone, I'm glad that we've got more equal opportunities when it comes to accessing science education and becoming scientists and going into that field, right? I'm so glad that it's becoming more equal and equitable. Obviously, there's a long way to go. You know, we had the episode with Tim and Ramon about LGBT scientists, and obviously it's still a difficulty to get women into the sciences and keep them in the sciences. We've done an episode on that as well. But I have to say, back when you could just be one rich crazy dude doing whatever you wanted, that was pretty cool.
Corey, we do have that, and you don't like him.
That's different.
You don't like him.
That's different. No, because this one rich crazy dude doing whatever he wanted, they're doing whatever they want in the sense of like us doing this podcast. We started this podcast. We were like, this is fun. Let's do this. You think like Isaac Newton was like, he was just interested in all that stuff, and he was like, I want to find this stuff out. I'm gonna figure this out. It's not quite the same as Elon Musk being like, I want more money. You know, he doesn't care about like going to Mars outside of being the king of Mars because no one on Earth likes him. You know, like I almost miss when scientists could just do whatever it was that they were interested in or do what they wanted without worrying about where the funding would come from or how people would respond to it. You know,
the thing that confuses me about it is that scientists' main role, right, like the literal purpose of that career is to help us understand society. But then they are forced, I don't know what term I should be using, but scientists are forced to use such technical language to tick boxes to get into papers, which then the media then completely misconstrues for something else, which literally unravels everything that science is meant to do.
Yeah.
What is the point? I don't really get it.
Money, I guess, is the point. Money, right? Can we agree? Money?
Probably money.
Yeah, because that makes sense as to why anyone who wants to look at any of the resources that I use is really going to struggle unless they went to a university that still lets them access that stuff. Because honestly, the price of just researching a SCI GUYS episode could easily get into the thousands if it's a big one, and I'm looking at, and I don't care where I'm getting my sources from, because it costs, like, I mean, if we're going by individual like actual papers rather than like, you know, having a subscription to a journal, right? Mm-hmm. But like it costs so much money, and I don't quite understand why. Because every single time I look into it, I'm like,
it is getting there. It's getting better.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The open science framework, but it just takes so long.
Yeah, I mean, I follow a guy on Twitter. I think it's Michael Eisen, might be his name. Mm-hmm. I think he was the head of eLife, or still. I can't remember exactly. I follow the guy on Twitter, but he's constantly talking about this open model of science, and it's such a bloody struggle because there's so much money in these journals and whatnot, and every single time you look into it, it's like, okay, well, are they paying people to peer review? No, they're not doing that. Okay, well, are they paying? No, you've got to pay to submit to the. So where are you taking the money that you're being given? Where is that going to? Oh, to the people that. Oh, okay, right. I see. It's just your profits. Good to know. It's not going back into the ecosystem in any way. It's just being funneled into people's pockets.
Especially for
no clear reason.
When the internet was literally invented to share scientific information. That's
not for free.
Well,
yeah, I know.
Yes, for free. Yes, for free. Yes, for free. Literally, that's what it was for.
I know.
It's not for like tweets and porn. It's for like sharing scientific information.
And also porn.
Yeah.
I don't think that the
porn came about quick.
CERN at what's he called? What's the inventor of the internet? Tim Berners-Lee at CERN was going, ooh, I think I want to design a system for sharing scientific information and pornography.
I mean, I'd like to think that Miniclip was also up there as one of the top priorities.
Yes.
Because that gave me great joy as a child.
Oh man, that's a reference that half our audience won't understand. Miniclip.
Oh my lord, Jesus. Oh god, I struggle nowadays because like fans of SCI GUYS are getting.
Old man yells at cloud.
No, but SCI GUYS fans, like some of them are kind of younger, and I don't. In my general life, I have no other reason to interact with people of that age group, and it becomes very weird when I'm like, oh yes, I'm older than I was considering myself to be. I'm much older than I was considering myself to be. Things that I liked as a child are now out of date. I'm out of touch. I don't know what Riz means.
It's giving in Grandpa Simpson.
I'm not yelling at the cloud. I'm baffled by it. Yeah, so Basically, again, I mean, we've kind of already spoken about this. The studies before this one kind of showed that women's sexual orientation is weakly reflected in their relative level of physiological sexual arousal to male and female sexual stimuli, which is basically what we've just been saying, which is you show a lady some porn and it's not going to match the results that you might think based on her sexuality. Yeah.
Yep.
Why do you think that might be?
Well, that's what I was about to get into now, because there's a few different ideas for causes. I mean, why don't we ask Luke what he thinks it is, and then I can answer after that.
Well, I do remember one of the theories from the episode we did about it, which is that this is a difficult thing to say. Like, it's not a nice thing to say, but there would be some physiological benefits to a woman
being able to self-lubricate.
Exactly, right? There'd be some physiological benefits to automatically becoming sort of ready for sex in response to sexual stimuli, which there might not be as much for a male. So I'll let you read into that what you will, because I don't want to trigger anyone, but that would be one theory.
Look, it's called the preparation hypothesis.
That's what I said.
People can figure out what it is. It's basically, the idea is it's good to maybe get prepared if you see sexual activity going on for whatever reason. But and that's because physiological arousal allows the vagina to become lubricated, thus reducing the likelihood of genital injury that could occur through sexual intercourse. Is a slightly altered quote from, I believe, The Independent or BBC. I don't know. Yeah. Sources are down there. You'll figure it out. But
they also could just be all lesbians, and straight women are a myth.
Maybe.
Made up by the church.
Sure.
Maybe straight women just don't exist.
But also, there's some evidence that might not be the case. There was a study in 2018. It was of 20 women. Apparently, they found that watching porn didn't automatically lead to lubrication. Right. So it's like, if that could be a cause of it, but also you'd expect, if that was the cause, that then seeing this would then result in lubrication, which it doesn't necessarily. So it's, but then also it could still be the cause regardless.
This is exactly why scientists as well have to be so careful with language, because the nuance is really important. We're talking about lubrication here, which is interesting and absolutely important to take into account, but not necessarily what this study also looked at.
Oh yeah.
And not something that can be equally looked at between cis men and cis women, as it was in this sample, right? We're talking about blood pulse in the cis women in terms of genitals, and we're talking about circumference of, like, diameter of a penis in relation to cis men. So neither of those really test lubrication. So really interesting to see that alongside the other study you mentioned, Corey. Yeah, no, I mean,
I'm glad that you sort of have brought that up, because it's one of those things where you measure one thing, you test one thing, and then you can not necessarily. You can kind of guess. What's the word for guessing in science?
Hypothesize?
Sure, whatever. You could basically
educated guesstimates or assumptions.
Yeah, exactly. You could sort of say, well, usually these things correlate. Yeah, usually these things correlate with each other. So we could assume, we could hypothesize that from this. We could then say, well, maybe this is the case. Okay, well, lubrication and physiological arousal, they're correlated often. Usually when there's a physiological arousal, we see lubrication. So then maybe the reason for this is that. But until you connect those two things, you don't know. And that's another thing that I think scientists have been and again, scientists are trained to be hot on this stuff, and some of them still suck at it. Absolutely, some of them suck real bad at this. But I don't think the general public thinks about that. 1 + 1 = 2. That doesn't necessarily mean something else. That was a bad analogy. But you don't usually think that, okay, well, we've only measured this thing. That doesn't necessarily mean that this thing is also true, because there could be something that we're missing. You know what I mean?
Well, I think a really important visualization for this one is how do cis men lubricate? Can cis men self-lubricate?
Yeah, a little bit, a tiny bit.
It's not comfortably, but
and it certainly doesn't help with I mean, maybe it does. I've not really thought about it too much, but in terms of the preparation that we're talking about, in terms of cis women, doesn't seem to work in the same way.
This is the difficult thing. Like, I feel like when we approach these subjects, a lot of people bring in a lot of assumptions they're entirely unaware of having. And it happens a lot in the debate when it comes to what is sex. Like, oh, well, sex is this specific definition that excludes trans people, or sex is that specific. People will come in with assumptions of, okay, well, this definitely means this. All penises are exactly like this. This is the purpose of that, without realizing that they don't actually know what they think they know. It's far more complex than that. Like, for example, people will come into that debate and say, yes, different genitals are entirely different. They're not remotely the same at all, when actually the clitoris and the penis are like the same structure. They've just gone through different pathways of development, but fundamentally they're fairly similar. You know what I mean? They're pretty similar, and people don't know that necessarily, and so they'll assume they're just very different things because they look fairly different, and the way that most people engage with them. So they'll bring that assumption in without even knowing it. That's another thing that scientists do. This has kind of become an episode of what do scientists do to avoid their own bias and whatnot. But it's another thing. Like, you got to be aware of, like, what assumptions am I potentially making? And it's okay to make assumptions. You just need to clearly state them so that, like, if someone finds out, oh, that's not the case, then they know to take that into account.
Ding-a-ling-ling, is that the ad bell?
I think it is, but it's rather quiet this time.
Well, Luke, we want to keep a big old secret about this SCI GUYS merch.
Yes. Please do not tell anybody, and do not purchase any of it. Otherwise, people will find out.
They might see you wearing our merch or displaying our merch and think, oh wow, what a cool person. And I'll tell you this, as a cool person myself, having people think you're a cool person can be very, very stressful.
Yeah, we can't have that. And we also can't have you supporting the show to exist that you're enjoying right now.
Yeah, so absolutely under no circumstances should you go to normalcitizen.store and pick up some SCI GUYS merch. Some SCI GUYS merch like beanies and posters and t-shirts and calendars and cool stuff like that. Definitely don't go to that store and buy that.
Goodness me, that's an awful lot of stuff that I'm not going to purchase.
Absolutely, Luke. Now let's get back to the show before anyone listens to us.
God, I really hope we got away with that one.
So that was just one potential reason. There's another potential cause for this. Do you know what it is, either of you? I mean, Shaba, I feel like you might know.
I have an idea, but it's not something that I think is in papers. It's just something that we spoke about a lot.
Yeah? What is it?
Do you want me to present my hypothesis?
Yeah, present it. Present away.
So my thinking is, right, I think it's also important when talking about this to understand the type of porn that was being watched in this study, which, to clarify for people who might not know, is individual porn. Like, for me, when I think of porn, I think multiple people, I think role play, maybe I'm giving away too much of what my search history is.
Yeah, thank you for that one.
But, it's more developed than what science shows, and it needs to be significantly more stripped back because you have to have as little variance as possible, right? So in the booth, when you're watching this porn, it's 6 individual images of either a woman or a man. They're 3 different women and 3 different men, mostly using toys or just doing like acts as if there was someone else there. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's like a pretty set stage. I believe one had a feather boa in it. There was a guitar in another. Like, you imagination.
Sorry, a guitar.
You want to have...
sorry. On the stage. Sorry, they were doing these things on a stage.
No, like in a set, right? Like, set the stage. It's
okay.
colloquialism.
Like the set dressing.
I love that you remembered that there was a guitar in the porn that you watched for a scientific study.
Do you know why? It's because this particular video, right, she's using this toy and it kind of sounded like a drill and it freaked me out a bit. I'm not gonna lie. It was a little odd. Yeah.
So you just just your eyes drifted. Ooh, a guitar.
Have we explicitly said? I don't think we've explicitly said in the episode yet that Shaba, you actually took part in the study. Have we said that yet?
No,
I don't think we have. Well, there you go. Shaba was one of the people in this.
Not for this sample, but for the sequel one. Absolutely, yeah. So exactly the same booth, just a different paper. Yeah. But no, so that was when I was looking at that, what I found interesting from my experience was I wondered how much of that was me putting myself in that position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get you.
So I wondered, because it's kind of a thing reported generally in science that women have significantly higher empathy than men. If it's just a position of, well, women seem more aroused to everything because we can put ourselves in the position when looking at whatever, you know, if we're looking at men to, you know, be in the position that they're the position of being done, or the position of being. You're putting yourself
in the position in that sexual scenario. It's like a self-insert.
Trying to repress every like school child urge to not giggle because it's such a naughty conversation.
Yeah. You're putting yourself in the position. No, that's absolutely it. The sort of empathy model where
is that what you found?
So people talk about this. So you know, it says, you know, that studies show that women are naturally more empathetic than men. You can tell that. I took that quote from the bloody BBC or whatever. Like, yeah, it says, you know, studies show women are naturally more empathetic than men. Look, whatever the cause for that is, the use of the word naturally there, whatever, right? Let's move past that.
Yeah.
For now,
that was a big assumption to have made.
Yeah.
Naturally, what? Did you go and visit like people outside of society as well?
But the point is that women are generally, we've kind of measured or noticed or whatever. Women are generally more able to kind of look at someone and be like, I know what they're feeling. And then put themselves in that position. And so then you could imagine that the reason, as you've said, Shaba, for that sort of pattern of arousal isn't because, I'm seeing a lady and I'm all turned it on as a straight lady.
What if I were the lady?
What if I were that lady?
Yeah.
I'd be so turned on being that lady.
Regardless of like who or what you're looking at, right? Like if we take it away from horniness, like if I see someone in love, I feel love. If I see someone really happy, I'll be happy, even if that's like a hamster.
Really?
I'm not suggesting that like if I saw a hamster getting horny, I get horny. What I'm saying is,
I don't think any of us are suggesting you were suggesting that.
I'm so glad that you've mentioned that, Shaba. I'm so glad that you've mentioned that because
you are.
Oh yeah, because in an article for the University of Essex blog written by Chloe Tasker, it points out that there was a study that potentially supports this empathy theory, wherein they showed women chimpanzees having sex, and they noted that there was some genital arousal.
And did they do this for cis men alongside cis women? Like, I'd be so interested.
I'm not even sure. To be honest, I didn't look into the study itself. Let me have a look here.
We should totally look into that.
The participants were 20 homosexual women, 27 heterosexual women, 17 homosexual men, and 27 heterosexual men. Yeah. So, yeah, as predicted, however, actor gender was more important to men than for women, and the level of sexual activity was more important for women than for men. Consistent with this result, women responded genitally to bonobo copulation, whereas men did not.
And the BBC headline reads, "Women want to have sex with monkeys."
Right. Like, I would be so interested in seeing like a study done where we could make animated porn, but with like tomatoes. You know, or like just something so random.
I need for you to watch the film Sausage Party.
Exactly. Well, that one also just freaked me out. Like, there's a line. There's a line.
There's a line. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The massive food orgy at the end of that animated film crossed a line for you.
Well, hey,
where two tomatoes wouldn't.
We can contact your guy.
Love is between one tomato and one cucumber. Okay, as soon as you start adding in falafels and bagels and oh no.
Can we contact your guy and get his like genital stimulation measuring equipment, and we can all watch the end scene of Sausage Party and measure our arousal?
I want to be clear.
There are way too many variances in Sausage Party.
They don't stimulate the genitals. They just
stimulation
measure.
Measuring.
Okay.
Like how stimulated you are. It's not a fleshlight. I'm not asking for Gerald to lend us his fleshlight.
I'll just lend you mine. It's fine. Just wash it out once you're done with it.
There's like a mechanical hand that just does this, and you can place like hot dogs inside.
Oh.
Yeah, no, but the empathy idea is another one sort of for it there, and it's really difficult to come up with answers for this, and I think one reason for it is sex and gender being more of a spectrum than people would generally consider them to be, right? Like,
and
as in,
just to confirm, when you say sex there, you mean actual sexual intercourse?
Oh, sorry, no, I mean, well, yeah, actually, sexual intercourse is also more of a spectrum. When I say sex is more of a spectrum, what I mean is sexual characteristics aren't, like, distinctly males all are like this, females all are like this. There's a bit of overlap there with certain things, even hormone balances and like sensitivity to it's more complicated than, this chromosome make you lady, that chromosome make you man. I
think testosterone exposure in the womb is also something that Geralt suggested.
Yeah,
a reason.
do you know more about that? Because that's something that comes up an awful lot, like, hormones that are present in the womb. I think we spoke about this in one of the other episodes we did this month for our Pride Month. If you've not seen it yet, it was the episode with Vigard about, the gay uncle hypothesis.
Yes.
And testosterone sort of sensitivity in the womb, or how the mother's body reacts to testosterone and whatnot, is a hypothesis for the sort of reason that some kids end up as being little gays. I'm sorry, I ended that in such an offensive way.
I saw it as wholesome because of the community that we're in, but I can see why it would.
Reclaim little gays as a phrase.
People listen to this and they think that I'm being offensive, and I'm like, nah. I'm not punching down. I'm punching sideways. All right, we're all pals here. To
a certain extent, you're punching yourself.
Yeah, to a certain extent, I am punching myself just a little bit. But yeah, no. So do you know any more about how sort of testosterone in the womb might affect this?
Not personally. I definitely know that this is a reason that Geralt gives in this study, and this is something that the lab as a whole has looked into. Somebody else who's an incredible academic, Tuesday Watts, also part of Geralt's lab, actually looked at this in relation to twins. I don't know, did you hear anything about that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Identical twins, where one might grow up to be gay and one not, with different sexual orientations or, different reasons. And I know epigenetics is always discussed as another potential reason. They're all such complicated and nuanced subjects. As if sexuality isn't.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. No, exactly my point. And Luke, do you know what epigenetics is?
Yes, it is a little extra layer that goes no to some of your genes and yes more to some of your genes.
Yeah,
it makes genes activated or like down squished.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Absolutely. It's not just about what exactly your DNA says.
Yeah.
It's also about how much you stick to that plan.
Yeah.
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 Right, sure. No, but you're so right, Shaba, that like sexuality is complicated, and that's what I find really interesting about this kind of research, because it's necessarily built on using distinct categories, like bisexual women and straight women or homosexual women, and in a lot of studies, I swear to God, I've read so many studies on sort of gay stuff. So many studies, they're just like, nah, get rid of bisexuals. Nah, they just pretend they don't exist for now because they're just too much. It's too difficult. Let's just choose gays and straights, and we'll figure out the bisexuals later. And there's a strong reason for that, because bisexual doesn't mean the same thing as gay or straight. By which I mean, obviously they've got different definitions, but by which I mean, if someone says, I'm bisexual, and then someone else says, I'm also bisexual, you have no idea what level of attraction they've got to either sort of like any group of people, right? Like someone could be bi and be very, very attracted to women and not very attracted to men, or vice versa, or be equal. Whereas, if it's a straight person and they're exclusively attracted to women, it doesn't necessarily matter as much what the sort of how attracted they are to women. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But like, so there's that aspect, but also the aspect of sex and gender, wherein what is a man? What is a woman? Sorry, I'm going Matt Walsh again, but you know what I mean?
I get adverts that start like this all the time on YouTube.
Almost every SCI GUYS ad, mid-roll, pre-roll, is Matt Walsh.
Is he the one who goes like, he goes out to like a tribe and goes, can a man turn into a woman? And all the tribes people go, ha 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 ha. Even though there is literally a tribe of like trans women. Yeah. That does literally exist.
Yeah, but also if you go to a tribe that hasn't had any contact with like, the rest of the world and say, do you think that I can magically send information across the globe immediately? They'd be like, ha. It's just a phone. We've had them for a while. They don't know about phones. It's like the very fact that you've got to go to a group of people who are cut off culturally, socially, from the rest of the world to ask them what they think about this cultural and social thing. It's like, maybe you're asking the wrong people.
If you go far enough back, they'll all laugh at you if you try to give them a pound coin for some work.
No, exactly, right?
They'll be like, no, ha 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 ha. Like, yeah.
So when it comes to being attracted to say men or women or whatever, it's like, what kind of women are you attracted to? For example, for me, right? Like, I don't know what it is, but straight women don't tend to do it for me. It's all the women that I'm attracted to pretty much end up being queer. So if I've ever had a crush on you, you're probably not straight. There's like a 90% queer rate of like all the women I've ever been like
Corey
attracted
is
to.
the litmus test. You got a hell of a good gaydar there, but specifically for lesbians.
Not just lesbians, bi women too, queer women.
Okay.
I don't know how you feel. Like, does that change for you at different times of the year? Because it totally changes for me. And when I like understood what the bicycle was, I was like, sorry? Like, this isn't just self-esteem and internal insecurity.
The two-wheel thing that you ride around on?
The bicycle.
No. So fair, I hear you. The bicycle, for those who might not know.
Have you guys heard of the bicycle? God, this is
mind-blowing.
This is tomorrow's headline. Straight people can only ride unicycles. That's the headline coming from this.
I'm okay with this law.
and homosexual people ride them backwards. It's just the way it is.
Can you explain the bicycle?
Sure, bicycle. The bicycle is the idea that essentially people who are bisexual go through different phases of being attracted in different levels. So if we think of it as sort of like, see the recycling sign, but replace each arrow with I'm straight, I'm bi, I'm gay, no wait, I'm straight, I'm bi, I'm gay, no wait. It's just this constant idea of questioning.
That's interesting. I don't tend to question or fluctuate all that much. Sometimes I'll have a thought in my mind of like, what if I'm actually, and then I'm like, that's dumb. That's really, like, just think about all of the times where you've proven that to absolutely not be the case, you know? Like, I say that to myself, like, oh, that's dumb for myself. That's not to, say anything about anyone else who's, struggling or questioning or anything like that. I just mean, for me, I'm so bloody bi, like 50-50, down the middle, don't even
all
really
the time.
get, yeah, all the time. Don't even really, I mean, like, all the time, like, it's more that I don't really get the, like, I just don't get the distinction between I am attracted only to I can't understand only being attracted to one group, because people are hot, right? I don't get attracted to only being...
Oh my god, people are so hot. I'm glad I'm not the only thirsty person.
Yeah, why are you going to limit yourself to one gender, stupid? Okay, I'm only attracted to this kind of gender. Okay, I'm going to have everyone else.
Is how Corey's brain works.
No, it's perfectly fine. I'm joking. Like, it is perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine, valid, whatever. But, like, just personally, I just don't... it's not something that computes for me, But like, yeah, I mean, I guess there's like, I don't even know if there's overall fluctuations. It's just like, I want this specific thing right now.
I think there are also studies that show that it fluctuates for different times of the month. For example, like when cis women or trans men are on their periods.
Yeah. No, I've seen that.
Can
Yeah.
affect, like your level, or also. Like, it sounds odd, but what your sort of aim is?
Yeah.
Because I know for me, I love the idea of... I think I'm, like, more sexually attracted to women than I am men. Mm-hmm. But in terms of relationships, I'm more into the idea of being with men. So for the more sort of social attraction elements, I'm more attracted to men than women.
That's so interesting.
It's so nuanced and different for every person.
That's something that I wanted to bring up there, because people will hear me talk and be like, oh, you're actually pansexual. I'm like, well, I'm not. I mean, for one thing, I get to choose which one I am. But no, but also, like, I'm not attracted to men and women in the same way. Like, something that's hot on women is not necessarily hot on men. You know what I mean?
So you'd like it for some people who like super femme women, but like macho guys.
Yeah, not me specifically, but yeah, some, sure. Some people are like that, where I'm just like, this thing is really hot for a girl. If a guy does it, dead to me. Absolutely not. How dare you? And I don't get why. I don't understand it. It's different for like also non-binary people come into this as well. There's like certain things that are like attractive and not attractive, and gender plays a role in it. And I don't know how or why, but it kind of does. And the point that I'm trying to get across here overall, we to kind of bring it back, is that all of this research is predicated upon categories, which is fine. Categories are useful and good, and we should use categories, right? Like, you can't say, oh, categories are bad, then also have a micro label, right? Like, you're just trying to categorize yourself to a smaller, more specific category, but it's a category nonetheless, right? And while categories are useful, they can also limit our understanding sometimes. And I'm not saying this is what, the scientists are doing, but this is definitely something that you end up seeing when it gets to the media and the public, which is people take categories, I wouldn't even say for granted. They just see them as objective fact, right? It is an objective fact that there are straight people, gay people, bi people, and all of the rest, right? That's an objective fact, and these kinds of classifications have always existed. And when they haven't existed, that's been down to us not understanding things nearly well enough. That's not really the case. Applying gay, bi, straight to people is messy. It's not necessary, and it's not objective. It's entirely subjective, as evidenced by the fact that we've got 3 words that mean more or less the same thing, but people use use the 3 different terms, like omnisexual, bisexual, pansexual. They mean more or less the same thing. Some people have distinctions between them, but overall they generally mean kind of the same-ish sort of thing, right?
I definitely think you're right, though, when you say that, science can also be the problem. I don't think we should just, not just foo-foo science, be like, oh, you're superior and mighty and therefore it's okay. I think maybe it's not science being the problem itself, but a lack of understanding what science does, because, just the fundamentals of understanding that science is assumptions. Science is generalizations. Yeah. Everybody is different. And when we look at science, what we're talking about is mathematical averages. If we look at a bell curve, we're looking at just at the tippy top of that curve, and then extrapolating and assuming that everybody will therefore fit this ideal.
Yeah.
Forgetting that if a sample is hundreds or even thousands, there's so many people that fall along this part that aren't being discussed in these articles. It's not to say that this is be all and end all. It's just is what the majority of people do, and that's okay to know, as long as we then don't stroke everyone with the same brush.
This is why I'm always saying that categories are good and fine and useful. You just need to recognize that they're not objective reality. That's that is fine. You can, so long as you recognize that gay, straight, bi don't really exist and they don't need to exist, that's fine.
I think you should have to have a license to use categories. And to get the license, you have to promise not to believe they're real.
Is that it? You're just going to promise?
I mean, if we're talking super deep about all of this, it's literally why we exist. Social comparison is one of 4 main reasons why people speak to other people. And prejudice, which is based on survival, right? We fear what we don't know. So if someone is slightly different to us, I know I'm not a table. When if I was a caveman, right, I'd be scared of tables because I'm not a table. But
true.
It doesn't, it's just the reality of how our brains work. We are scared of what is different, and to know what is different, we have to put people in boxes.
Yeah, and you know what? I want to add to that, because people will often, you'll often find sort of conservatives, fascists, that lot, saying, yes, prejudice, in-group, out-group, racism is biological, it's just in-group, out-group behavior, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The fact that we're able to say, hey, this is a specific thing and this is the cause of it, and also we've got big old smart brains, just think your way out of it. You can't completely, in the same sense of Shaba will know this. That sounded so patronizing for what I'm about to say. In the same sense as with parasocial relationships, you told us the way back that just knowing that parasocial relationships exist and how they work, that doesn't make you any less susceptible to, developing a parasocial relationship. I shouldn't even say susceptible, because it's just a thing that happens. It's not a good thing or a bad thing. It is merely a thing that humans do. It's just how we're built, right? I
was thinking about this yesterday with Bob's Burgers. I nearly cried because they're not real.
Right?
It made me so sad. I want to meet them so bad.
Right? I do this thing where obviously we have friends who do TikTok, and I sometimes struggle if if I'm not thinking to differentiate who is my friend that does TikTok and who is someone I just follow on TikTok and have that kind of parasocial relationship with. And because it's a really small line between this is my friend who does TikToks and I'm watching them on TikTok and I think of them as a friend, through these videos because they're my friend, and this is someone who I watch a lot on TikTok, and I feel like I know them from the TikToks, and also a lot of my friends are also on like, it's a really thin line for them to cross over. So I always find myself being like, do I know this person, or have I just seen a lot of their videos?
Yeah, but I also feel a part of that is that you place yourself in the same category as them. Like, you have things in common with them because you also create content.
Yeah.
I don't think
Again,
it's entirely
more
just
categories and boxes.
you have shared, the same way that you might have shared experiences with somebody who lives in England if you were somewhere in a country that was nowhere near England, and you might be able to strike up a conversation easier with them than somebody if you were in like somewhere really far away where they don't speak English and they don't have the culture the same as you. I feel like it's kind of like that as well.
Oh, yeah, no. I'm not saying it's solely down to parasocial relationships. I'm just saying, like, it's a very easy thing for me to do, despite the fact that I know, like, vaguely, generally, more so than the average person, I would say, what a parasocial relationship is, generally how they work. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I am aware of that. That doesn't stop my brain.
There's a part of your brain that doesn't know the context of the fact that they're on Instagram or TikTok.
But I can notice it happening, and because I have that knowledge, I can be like, just reminding yourself. And so, to bring it back, just because there is a biological there's a biological thing that underpins this behavior, that doesn't mean that behavior should be encouraged or is value neutral or is even like good. If we're able to not be like racist, or if we're able to sort of counteract that in-group out-group thing, if we're able to counteract it, we probably should try and do that.
Maybe,
I think.
yeah. We used to like have babies that weren't perfect and just put them in the ground. Like that is a thing that we did in the past.
Yeah.
We should probably not do that though.
Yeah. Feed them to some.
No.
I do hear what you're saying though, and I agree. I think what I would add to that is it doesn't mean that conversation has to end there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, we're talking about these boxes. Look, the boxes are going to be made, and science has to exist with boxes because patterns are how our brains work. But like, just because I'm saying this because you said race, just because sure, a lot of brown people smell like curry, doesn't mean that you then need to say, oh, you smell like curry, in a derogatory way. It's what we do with that box, right? And how we decide to then use that box. And then if we're talking about it in terms of this study, just because we see, and it's true, that lesbian cis women absolutely seem to have patterns that are more in line with men, doesn't mean that lesbians are men or that all women are bi. It means, what do we do with that information? Okay, well, maybe we understand now that sex is different to gender, and we can use that as a reason to understand why that gap is happening. Is it that sexual orientation works with gender to be different, which is why, and I'm not just saying this because I'm married to the guy, I think Jamie's sequel to the study is really awesome.
Yeah.
Because it helps us find that, by using these boxes and adding another box of trans men, we find that it is actually more to do with the gender in our minds as opposed to what are genitals.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And this is the thing that really sort of interests me most about this whole conversation, which is, I feel like people want a simple answer. The simple answer is, why do lesbians exhibit male typical arousal patterns, like physiological arousal patterns? Like, why is that the case? Oh, well, because lesbians are just like, when they were developing, it messed up, and it was like, you were actually a boy, but they weren't a boy. They were actually a girl, and so now they are a girl, but they've got the boy trait of being attracted to girls. Like, that's a simple answer for people. It fits it fits a bunch of sort of preconceived notions, and it feels.
I feel like
good
you're trying
and
to do
easy.
a dot to dot there that looks really janky when you look at it from the whole.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's like, okay, absolutely. That is and people will say that's the explanation, right? I've seen so many different people be like, oh, well, this is the reason that trans people exist, and that's the reason that gay people exist. And I feel like looking for any one answer is stupid. And I don't just mean like, oh, misguided or, like a bit blah, blah. It is actually stupid. It
just doesn't exist.
No, exactly. I cannot imagine how anyone could go into any field, like biology related field, basically anything stemming from sort of the life sciences, and be like, yep, there is one distinct and simple answer to all of this, because that is never the case when it comes to like organisms ever, So, I mean, I would sort of view it as more there being potentially multiple reasons for this, especially because not everyone exhibits the exact same response. We can just kind of categorize them as being, okay, this is a kind of trend. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like that's something that really gets missed in translating from a paper to a newspaper or whatever, right? Because if I'm looking at the paper, like, which I have open in front of me right now, or I did until I accidentally closed it, and I don't know if I can open it again because it's only a one-time use thing. Oh, I downloaded it. That was it. Yeah, no. Like, if I look at this, I can see the results. I can like pour through them. I can be like, oh, well, this like, if I'm looking at this graph, that was off. There we go. You get more information, but it's like, it's not feasible for your average person to start, going through that or taking the time to learn to understand
Karen
it.
is just, sitting in her bed and scrolling and comes across a Twitter headline that tells her that wine is good for the body, why would she look into the scientific paper?
Oh my god!
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sorry. Can you? I'll happily do it if you don't know. But could you explain why we found that drinking a small amount of alcohol has health benefits?
Oh yeah.
Do you know?
Oh yeah, because rich people
this.
drink alcohol more often.
Yeah, rich people drink alcohol more often. Like, rich people drink small amounts of alcohol more often, and because of them having wealth, that means that they've got better health outcomes.
Yeah.
And there you go, right? That is a huge problem with how science is translated to media. It is that correlation is not causation.
Absolutely.
If there is one thing we need to learn in school, it's that.
We learn it. We learn it in the sense that people will say correlation isn't causation when you say, hey, these two things are correlated. Maybe we should consider an underlying cause that links them. People are like, oh, correlation isn't causation. Okay, sure. Use some critical thinking and maybe go beyond that. People use it as a way to shut people down rather. Maybe
journalists need to do it. They need to go back to school to learn that.
I just don't think you should have anyone ever writing for a paper in a science column or anything like that unless they have a degree relevant to the thing that they're talking about. I mean, and it sounds like almost draconian, like, oh, shouldn't everyone be able to have an opinion on this? Yeah, but not everyone's. I bloody struggle. Like, do you know how difficult it is for me to read papers in a field that isn't the very specific thing that I studied at uni, and even how annoying and difficult it can be to read things in that specific field. It's tough. There are lots of words that I have to look up. I need to check other things and maybe sometimes interviews to see if I've got the right idea based on what I'm reading. Like, I could literally, okay, let me just randomly scroll and I can read out a sentence. Like, okay, here we go. Lesbians were hypothesized to dilate more strongly to the same sex than to the other sex. One sample T-tests indicated that women of all sexual orientations dilated more to same-sex stimuli as compared with neutral. P is less than 0.0001. T is equal to 0.61 and more to the other sex stimuli as compared with neutral. And it just goes on that doesn't make any sense to most of the people listening. Yep. If I'm being perfectly honest with you, right? You need people that know what the they're talking about.
The thing that excited me about these studies, though, I feel like some of the reporting could have been more helpful in that it could have emphasized what can we actually glean from this stuff? Because while Shaba, you said or Corey said that people should have a degree. The thing is there's also, like we've said earlier, there's some perverse incentives here where the incentive is not actually to correctly and helpfully disseminate the information. The incentive is to write a clickbait headline that you can actually...
But what is that useful information that can be...
Yes, and to me, the thing that absolutely blew my mind, it was oh my God, that's so exciting about all these studies was, I to be honest, I'd forgotten about the lesbian part, but when specifically about the trans people arousal patterns part, that was so mind-blowingly exciting to me because it was oh my God,
for me too.
Evidence. This is so exciting. Evidence that this group of people are responding to stimuli differently to this group of people, and that does actually show that there's a difference between those two groups, and they're not the same thing, and we can prove that they are not pretending. That's oh my God, yes, so cool. And the same thing with the lesbian thing. It's oh, okay, they actually are responding to stimuli differently. That's really cool. That's the stuff you can report on. Imagine BBC, oh God, scientists find proof that trans people actually do respond differently than cis people, and they actually might exist. Woo! That's so cool.
Crazy.
But even more high level than that, I think that what I find really freaking cool about that is this is literal scientific proof. No one can disclaim this, right? That sex and gender identity are two different things. Take it even that one step higher. That is the big deal here, right?
Yeah.
sexual orientation. Lesbians respond differently. Lesbian cis women respond differently to straight cis women because sexual orientation is a thing. It's not something in people's minds. It's not a phase that someone can wish away. It's a genuine, like, main concept that can be scientifically proven, and that's what's really cool.
It is so cool. It's so interesting. And one thing that we've not mentioned yet that I feel the need, we've kind of touched on all of the different points, but I really want to bring it up. Something that people were talking about around this time is that, oh, well, then that just, but maybe everyone is bisexual, right? There's always been this idea of what if everyone is just bisexual? And like, sure, I get that, but what I think is more interesting about that conversation, rather than saying everyone is actually bisexual and people are lying, it's more looking at the cultural aspects of this. So what we were talking about way at the top of the episode of women being more likely to identify or disclose that they identify as bisexual when compared to men, right? And what's interesting about that is that doesn't mean that women are more likely to be bisexual than men, by any means. There's plenty of men that I've spoken to that identify as gay or straight, despite the fact that they are attracted to not just, men or not just women, respectively. And that's fine. But I feel like this view of sexual orientation as distinct and discrete categories limits people from understanding the cultural impacts, how culture can impact how someone identifies, right? Because there are absolutely people out there that would happily identify as bi if there wasn't such a massive cultural stigma against it. I don't just mean they're in the closet. I mean there are people that genuinely don't know that they are bi because, okay, put it this way. Let's say you're 95% attracted to women. You're a man, and you're 95% attracted to women, like 5% attracted to men. You're going to be focusing on the women thing because being attracted to men is bad. And so you might not even realize bad
it's so
culturally.
Much easier to just think, oh, well, this is the person that I want. I can put that down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I hear you. I saw a TikTok. I think I was even talking to you and Noah about this, Corey, recently, where it said something like how many homophobic parents are just bi people who think that being gay is a choice because they, as bi people, not accepting that they're bi, can just choose to be with. And like, that's mind-blowing to me.
When you look at chimps and stuff, I'm pretty sure, like, let me just double check this. I mean, bonobo is one of our closest relatives. They use sex as in a similar way to how we use sex sometimes. When
me and Corey fight, we shag it out.
We do, which is why you've made this joke before, and I'll say what I said the last time, which is why we never fight. But no, like, so, I mean, bonobo is one of our closest relatives. Again, please, no one take this as me saying, that means that all humans are I'm not. I'm just drawing a comparison.
Are you calling me a monkey, Corey?
Oh my God, are you calling me a monkey, Shaba? That's more racist, I think.
We're just saying that as a woman, you want to have sex with monkeys.
That has been scientifically proven.
Yes.
That has been scientifically proven. You want to shag monkeys. Anyway, getting back to what I was saying.
You want to shag Luke.
That's perfectly fine. I'm okay with that, thank you.
Scientifically proven.
How do you feel as you being on the same level as monkeys here, like wanting to have sex? It's like that's what Jabba's just done.
But that is the next headline. Luke is a monkey.
I think I've been put below monkeys.
Technically is a monkey. All people are technically monkeys. If we look at the classification, you can't call monkeys and other things that we call monkeys without also calling humans monkeys. Anyway, what
we do know is that Shabba is not a table.
I don't know that. I don't know that. Tables can have 2 legs.
4 legs and a thing you can put stuff on. Shabba, you are a table.
Shabba's a table. Anyway, so what I'm saying is that, if bonobos will happily engage, in sexual activity, regardless of sex or gender, and does it not like follow that given that a lot of sort of closely related chimp species will use sex in that way, kind of often like regardless of gender or have the capacity for whatever, right? Does it also make sense that humans aren't necessarily strictly this or that there's probably a little bit of fluidity in there, and if there weren't so many cultural hang-ups about X, Y, Z, people might be a bit more open to exploring that, and maybe a lot of genital preferences as well are down to cultural stigmas and hang-ups, right? Like, if the idea that dicks are gay if you're a man is going to make you have an aversion to that, if gay is this sort of cultural, in our culture, is this sort of like bad thing, this nebulous thing that makes you weak and bad and degenerate and all of those things, right? You're inherently going to want to avoid things that put you in that social category. And you know,
Oh
if
my
people can actually
gosh.
have a build up an aversion to something that is very visceral, despite it not being like an innate thing.
No, you just reminded me of something that I read online, and like I initially laughed, but it honestly makes me so sad. And it was this guy who was genuinely asking if his newborn baby daughter breastfeeding from her mum's breast, would turn the daughter into a lesbian. He had a genuine concern that the exposure to breasts at such a young age would turn this child into a lesbian. This is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
It's
Jesus.
this horrific social pressure that makes you question through fear. And I mean, yeah, I know that is a very extreme example.
No.
But an example that we see all the time that's totally allowed for some reason is the idea that, oh, if you're in a different gender relationship, a man and a woman, if the husband goes off and kisses another guy, that's going to end a marriage. If a wife goes off and kisses another woman, that's hot.
Yeah.
And opens up to a threesome. Like this, I just don't understand where it comes from.
Yeah.
I question where on the line those boundaries were made.
What exactly? This is, I mean, and so much of it comes down to historical sort of views of women being basically property, right? Like, you know, it's fine for women to kiss because when it comes to sexuality, women don't have a sexuality. And I'm talking about culturally here, by the way. I'm not talking about my own things, or I'm not asserting this as being factual. In the sort of prevailing view of Western culture, women don't necessarily have sexuality, right? Sexuality is something that is put upon women by someone else. So a man views a woman and is like, you're hot and I'm sexualizing you. And that, so like, you know, two women kissing, they can't sexualize each other. They're women, so it's fine. You know what I mean? And when it comes to men kissing, you don't have this experimentation that's nearly, you don't have an experimentation amongst men that is accepted as, you know, experimentation amongst women. You know, girls kissing, it's just girls drunk at a party kissing. It's just two friends
being silly.
Two guys kiss, they're gay. Are you gay? Because like, as well, women can be bi, but men have to be straight or gay. Do you know what I mean? Like, culturally speaking, so often it's like women are allowed to be bi, or rather they're allowed to be straight despite kissing girls or whatever. Women can be straight regardless of, you know, their attraction to women. If a man is attracted to men, they're gay immediately. That's it. You're a gay man now. Doesn't matter if you like women. And it just makes it such a difficult environment, because there's so many dudes that I know, like I've spoken to some people, like in person, people that I know that have basically come out to me and said, yeah, like I think guys are hot, I would do this, like sometimes I think about that and I would want to do this, but also I'm in a relationship, like a committed relationship with a woman, and so I don't see that ending at any point, so I'm just gonna be straight. And it's like, wow, that's sad.
But I mean, also your orientation can be different to your relationship status.
If you're in an environment where being like openly bi is going to cause some problems, and you're already in a relationship and you don't need to disclose that, you're just not going to disclose that to anyone.
Somebody did this, right? It was like a viral thing that went around the internet after one of these shows, like Love is Blind, I think. There was like a couple, a boy and a girl, man and a woman, sorry. And yeah, he was just like, I need to tell you something, in a moment of vulnerability, and mentioned that he was bi, and she literally like did not want to be in a relationship with him because of that point.
Which I don't get.
So bizarre to me.
It's so strange. Like you get it from gay men as well. You get it from gay men as well too.
But you hear about a woman and it's like, oh really? Show me photos.
Yeah.
It's
No, it's ridiculous. And I guess it's because it's viewed as like, oh well, you're going to bring someone else into this then. And I don't want to, it's so strange.
Two people I can dominate.
Right? Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it's really interesting. And, you know, we've not gone super deep into the study itself because, if I'm honest, it is interesting. I don't think it is the most interesting thing in the grand scheme of this conversation. Do you know what I mean? I think it opens up a lot of really, really interesting conversations. And it's definitely, we've spoken about the study, like this study, and Jamie's sort of sequel study way more in depth in the episode we did with Jamie. By all means, go and check that out if you're more interested in the sort of nitty gritty. I don't really want to cover it all again because we discussed it in that episode, and I think the social implications of this are far more interesting. To anyone that's in the comments being like, oh, you said this was a science of bisexual women, and all you've been doing this time has just been talking about social. Science interacts with culture and, you know, like social issues all the time. There's It's no more or less science if we're not talking about the nitty-gritty specifics of a study that ultimately you don't really care about or understand, and instead are talking about the social implications.
One nitty-gritty that I think is really cool to share, that actually I think links in with this conversation really well, is the primary aim of this, or one of the primary aims of this study, and that was to see in the methodology, because I'm sure you would agree with me that hiking your ass up to the University of Essex to go and sit in a little padded booth and, you know, stick a probe in you, pop a little elastic band around your willy, it takes time. It's effort.
It does, yeah. I
really
try.
does.
I try to do it once a month, but I just sometimes it's hard.
It's also just genital measures are very invasive, understandably. So I think one of the cool things about the study is it's the first time that both measures were used in both genital measures and pupil dilation.
Yes.
And I know what Luke's going to say. You're going to tell me that eyes can now have boners. Because
I wasn't going to say that.
You were. I saw you. You were mouthing it.
So eyes can have boners. There you go.
I can see boner on your lips, Luke. I can see it.
Can you see boner in my eyes?
You'll get boner in your eyes if you're. But no, Shaba. Sorry, you're so right. Yeah. No, absolutely. It's really.
I think it's really cool. It's a very different and significantly easier way to now measure arousal, because we've found the same results between the two. That's highly correlated. Obviously, it'd be great to test the validity further, but how many cool studies can we now do to explore these other areas that you're rightly saying are significantly more interesting with these findings? That's what needs to be reported. The accuracies of what we actually find.
But people don't find that. But people don't find that interesting. And another thing is this as well is that something that came up when we were talking to Jamie, an issue with his study, is that it's really difficult to get trans people to come into a random university that is doing a study on trans people and drop their pants and have their genitals measured. That's it's an uncomfortable thing for anyone. I think it's understandable why there's extra discomfort there for trans people. Even moving past the genital thing, I can very much understand why a lot of trans people are wary about taking part in any study about trans people, because it's so easy for that to be used against trans people as a whole. But
for sure.
And this then would open up the ability to not have trans people have to drop their trousers and have their genitals measured. Just look them in the eyes. Just have a look at their eyes.
It actually means that we could do it with literally anybody all around the world. All you'd need is a webcam. And as long as you have sophisticated enough software, how cool is that? Accessible science. That's one of those things that I feel like we don't talk about nearly enough. Sort of the limitations of of how we can perform studies, and when we open up sort of new avenues like you've mentioned, how much that can actually change the landscape, because it is really fantastic, and I'm glad that you've brought it up where I didn't. Really brilliant to have you on. But I think that's more or less everything for this episode, to be honest. I mean, we've been going on for a wee bit, but I think we've covered a lot of ground. I think there's just one more thing to do. What's that?
It's the Quickfire Quiz.
Dun 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 dun. Bisexual edition?
So the rules for the Quickfire Quiz are the same as always. I'll ask one question. That's one question between the two of you. The first person to buzz in with the correct answer after finish asks the question wins. What do they win, Luke?
They win an eye boner.
I want one!
You may well get one.
And Luke, what is your buzzer? And Shaba, what is your buzzer?
Very good buzzer.
And my question for you both is, in 2020, approximately what percentage of the population of the UK over the age of 16 identified as lesbian, gay, or bisexual? Luke, what is your answer?
3.1%?
Oh, close, but no cigar. Shaba, do you want to come in for the steal?
I thought it was a 3-2.
Ding, ding, ding. That is correct. 3.2%. Well done.
Yay, eye
Eye boner for you. I wish I had an eye boner.
And you get an eye boner. And you get an eye boner.
Oh, my Lord. I mean, thank you for joining us, Shaba. We do need to thank all of our new patrons now, so why don't we get into that now? Luke.
I want to say a big thank you to LJ.
I want to say thanks to Mika.
Thanks, Brianna Manchester.
Cheers, dreamy idiot.
That's very mean. And thank you, Lane.
Thank you, Casey.
Thanks, Marianne Trepanier.
Thanks, AJ Mammal.
Thank you, Sophie Unwin.
Cheers, Fiona Thompson.
Thank you, Asaya. Asya. Thank you, Asya. Thank you to you.
Big ol' thanks to Ariana Lee Page.
I want to thank the cat man.
And finally, thank you to Mali Dinesh.
Goodness me.
Wow. That's a lot of new patrons. But that's all from us. Before we go, we'd like to thank all of our patrons with an extra special thank you to executive producers Denito and Glitchrabbit, and thank you for watching. You can find the full references for this episode down in the description. Subscribe for new episodes every Sunday, and why not leave us a nice wee comment? Support the pod at patreon.com/SciGuys, or you can find and contact us at SciGuysPod on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and at SciGuys on TikTok too. Or you can send us an email at sciguyspod@gmail.com.
That's sciguyspod@gmail.com.
SciGuysPod
At gmail.com. You can follow me at NotGore everywhere.
You can follow me at Luke Cutforth everywhere.
And I am Shaba everywhere.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye, because...
Goodbye. Shabby, you're a great bye. Good work.